Thanks for joining us today as we speak to Anand Patel, the Head of Technology and Innovation from the Chief Information Technology Office at Network Rail.
Got a mouthful.
Had to check my notes for that one, I have to say. When we began talking about an event and speaking to a customer around intelligent automation, our first thought, to be perfectly honest, was Network Rail. I mean, you guys for us are an exemplary model for how to implement an intelligent automation process around a digital transformation agenda. So it's with great pleasure that we get to speak to you today. Thanks for taking the time.
My pleasure.
So if we start by talking about the sort of types of intelligent automation technology that you've implemented within Network Rail, could you give us a run through of what you've got?
Yeah, absolutely. So, of course, Network Rail has quite a history with automation, and that starts with our control systems. Running the hard line of the railway, but within digital transformation, we really have a number of different types of solution and technology. So much of it is driven by workflow technology, and that obviously includes Liberty Create. Yeah. But really, we use those for different types of removing paper from our processes, trying to really drive our workforce to be able to capture and use data more effectively, and really streamlining the activities that they do. So those workflows, they happen in our field engineering operations, where our maintenance engineers are looking after the assets of the railway, right the way through into our back-end processes, where we look to use workflow to really improve the speed and quality of the activities that we do.
Yeah. And I'd assume with an organisation the size of Network Rail, process automation at scale is sort of absolutely key and must be a key consideration in everything that you implement.
Oh, it's huge for us. So as an arm's length body of the government as well, we're always looking to how we can be more efficient in using public money, always trying to become more effective at what we do, but also it gives us that structure to the data that we can become more data driven in some of the downstream processes as well. So Network Rail's going through a modernisation program where we're looking to really revamp and reconstruct many of those processes that we do to make them much more efficient, and automation is a key part of that.
So we were just talking about process automation at scale there. I assume that requires you to involve a sort of wider audience from the business, both in terms of input into the processes that are going to be done, but also in determining which processes to do in the first place.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's our business that puts the challenges in both to the digital factory and to innovation activities as well. So they're the ones who really define what their challenges are, and therefore which we look at. We then obviously triage those in terms of viability and cost and activity and resourcing, etc. But they're the ones who really put those challenges in, and we also try and enable our business teams to provide some automation themselves in a self-service capability, particularly for personal productivity or team productivity, where there's relatively straightforward low-code tools out there at the moment that can really be used by those business areas without really needing to involve IT at all.
So in terms of that programme, how's it going? What's been successful? What's failed? What have you learnt along the way?
So, there have been quite a number of successes. Really, we particularly in the managed station space and in our field operations. So, our field operations, we've been heavily investing in a mobile capability there, with mobile applications to really drive their activities to become much more streamlined, much easier, to allow us to scale the activities that we do and get through the workload without adding to our headcount. And in our back-end processes and in our stations, there's been a real shift to moving away from manual or paper-based activities, really driving those types of solutions where historically they may have been emailed or forms, email, Excel spreadsheets, those kind of productivity challenges, where we've really looked to use both what I'd call more formal automation techniques, but also using some of our Office 365 capabilities to enable much greater personal productivity as well.
Do you find everything now is mobile first? You mentioned mobile there. Obviously, you've got staff that you need to deliver this digital transformation program out to, that need to interact with the processes within your business. Do you look to do everything mobile first, or is it, I suppose, based on the role of the individual? I assume you have staff that are out managing, maintaining the tracks, for example, where they don't have a laptop or access to a desktop machine, and therefore that would be a good example of something that would maybe be mobile first. But do you look mobile first?
I think it's more driven by the role. So we just understand how the solution that we're creating would be used. Not everything is mobile first, although Network Rail has an enormous field workforce who absolutely use mobile devices, and certainly the solutions for those teams are heavily focused on mobile first. But we also have planners who have much more complex applications to use, which doesn't really sit well with mobile capability. So where we do that might be a more traditional desktop approach, but we still look to ensure that some of the insights and value that you can get from those systems is made available to mobile, so that people don't have to be in a particular location to take advantage.
So based on the role, based on the use case, and even for a particular use case, you could sort of break that down and have elements of it that are accessible via mobile. Yeah, that makes sense, and I suppose that leads quite nicely onto technical debt, because that was always seen with a very negative connotation. It was a problem, it was a debt that you were trying to deal with. But I suppose, as with any debt, we've all got mortgages, for example, as long as you've got a way to service that debt, then it doesn't necessarily have to be a problem. And I've noticed quite a lot of commentary recently, certainly in the context of digital transformation, whereby organisations are delivering solutions that they sort of know and accept have elements of technical debt, but they're achieving a goal immediately within a time frame that's needed, and then they've got a plan to sort of wipe that debt out over a period of time that's acceptable to the business. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a real challenge, and I'm not sure anyone's really solved it. Yes, certainly the agility that you need in order to be able to solve business problems quickly sometimes comes with aspects of technical debt. That technical debt, I think, is either driven through the sort of obsolescence life cycle of the technology you're using, or through perhaps what I'd maybe describe as suboptimal design of a solution in order to achieve something quickly. I think there's things that you can do within the activities to try and at least minimise that and make it manageable. And I think the approach that we take in Network Rail really is about firstly understanding the red lines, the things that you can't cross, and making sure that the rationale for the understanding is both right the way through the team, so that everyone understands why these things are so important. I think there's then just some good practice that you can drive through any development teams to be able to really help understand how poor design or perhaps suboptimal approaches can have a knock-on effect. And one of the things we do, for example, is we integrate our quality teams with the development team, right? So there's that continuous discussion of what's the best way to go about it. And part of that DevOps approach as well is the ops, right? The people who develop it also have some responsibility for its support, and therefore there's a vested interest in trying to manage that technical debt. I think there's also activities that we've been investing in within Network Rail to try and reduce the motivation to create technical debt. Often people are driven by deadlines to do the most expedient thing. So it's about how do you make the most expedient thing also the right thing. And I think there's a lot of work that we've been doing and that other organisations can do to really make the interfaces with the other systems that we have much easier to achieve without perhaps solutions that are a little less robust.
Yeah. You mentioned there development teams, delivery teams, QA, DevOps. I assume they all form part of your digital factory. I believe you follow that digital factory model of a sort of an organisation within your organisation that determines the best tools to use to solve the problem at hand. Can you give us a bit of an understanding of how that digital factory model works within Network Rail?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Network Rail being a huge and traditional and safety critical organisation obviously has a lot of governance and control around much of the activity we do because it's critical to the operation of the railway in the country. But at the same time, we recognise that the ability to respond quickly is absolutely key, particularly for specific, more experimental cases that come up. So we created the digital factory, which is a team of about 30 people. And it originated from our mobile development teams. Really, they were the ones who first started using agile methodologies with Network Rail and really started honing the best practice of how they could deliver within a public sector, large, monolith organisation, while using those kind of approaches. So as they developed that capability, we broadened out their scope. To really move beyond mobile and into low code and other types of application development, really leveraging the cloud services. They're made up of everyone from product owners and Scrum Masters, right the way through full stack engineers, quality engineers, as I said, UX specialists, low code specialists, all those sort of skills, so that they're an enclosed squad. Effectively, who can deliver a pipeline of projects ongoing.
So you've brought that team together from sort of different areas within the business to form the factory that will churn out the apps that will deliver your digital transformation priorities.
Yeah, that's right. So Network Rail also has many traditional style engineers working for it, and many of them had all kinds of digital skills as well. So we took the teams from within that mobile team. We reached out to various different parts of the business and gave opportunities both formally within the team, but also perhaps as an extension to the team as a resource within their existing roles to provide some good guidance to them and some support to them in how they do that. And we also, of course, recruited and brought in new skills where we needed to scale up or lacked particular expertise.
Yeah, we've definitely seen examples within other customers where they've engaged with sort of subject matter experts around a particular process, maybe business analysts and similar. And then based on the tool set used, obviously Liberty Create, Liberty RPA in this example, because it didn't require that sort of traditional developer background, they've then been able to contribute to the development of those applications in a way that they wouldn't have been able to before. They would have previously been a little bit more hands-off, had to hand over requirements to a traditional development team. But with maybe these more modern UI-driven development tools, they can actually get involved in the projects themselves. Have you seen that? Have you managed to bring people in that maybe wouldn't have considered themselves software developers before, and yet now they're able to contribute within the digital factory to the delivery of apps?
Yes, so I think the participation of the key stakeholders within the business process that we're looking to automate is absolutely critical to the success. IT only knows its own perspective, and that's not usually the correct perspective if you're going in cold. So the expertise from those people is absolutely critical to the success of these projects. In addition to that, I'm not sure we've yet got to the point where those people are seeing themselves as perhaps able to develop and developers. We're not quite at that position yet in many cases, but certainly they see themselves as a core part of the team that's creating it, and we recognise that the expertise that they bring is what helps us get from the theoretical concept of a solution to the real world in what is a difficult and challenging environment to be working in.
What other lessons sort of you learnt along the way? If we have anyone watching this that's looking to scale up the projects that they're running. Obviously, you've got the digital factory approach, but is there any other lessons you've learned that might be valuable for others to hear?
Yeah, I think probably the key thing is that, and it's a little bit of a cliche, but that 60-70% of the work is before you start doing any coding whatsoever.
Yeah.
Certainly in our industry, and I'm sure in many others, the processes are complex. The implications of them are complex. The way that they're used and whether they're applied are complex. The regulations are complex. And really spending the time to get to the bottom and understanding that process long before you've started creating any solution is absolutely key to success.
Yeah.
It also helps us to choose which activities to not do at this point. Understand where your dependencies are and how those dependencies can negate the activity that you want to do or the rapidity which you want to achieve it. So really, I think overall that's absolutely critical. I think secondly, as we just alluded, the involvement in the frontline staff, the people who are actually going to use and run the process, is the second key factor. When we first started with this, we chose some example processes to try the solutions with, and while they were successful in themselves, the rollout didn't really get the traction that we really hoped, and we had to do quite a lot of rework in order to get to that point. And I think that involvement of the key people and it is the right people rather than perhaps the bosses of those areas that is really critical to getting involved in those projects. Those are the two things I think that make it genuinely successful, along with don't expect to be right first time, right? Iterate it, because being right first time means you're taking a long time over it. It's better to get it 80% right and then get that feedback to respond to that real world experience.
So you mentioned there, it's not necessarily the bosses, it's the frontline staff that know what needs to be done as the priority. And we've obviously heard recently on the news that Network Rail is going to transition to Great British Railways. So what impact is that going to have on your automation plans and priorities for the future?
Well, I hope it's really going to turbocharge it. The white paper that described Great British Railways and set out the stall really talks about a data capability for Network Rail, a digital capability for Network Rail, modernising the industry. Not for Network Rail, for Great British Railway. Really, modernising the industry and bringing together many of the different fragmented parts, and that really opens up huge numbers of opportunities for automation in areas that at the moment is extremely difficult. It also looks at really opening up the data of the industry, and again that creates innovation opportunities and automation opportunities that are really at the moment quite challenging because of the number of stakeholder parties involved. So certainly that digital journey that Great British Railway is looking to go on, I think is a huge opportunity for the digital transformation of the industry.
And it sounds like it's going to be a sort of digital, data-centric organisation. Would that be fair?
That's certainly, as it was described, it's early days at the moment to understand exactly what that looks like, and beyond my pay grade to make those definitions. But certainly that's the intent around really bringing a much more modern way of working, a much more digitally driven capability, and customer-facing services such as digital ticketing. Again, open up so much more opportunity for us to give a better customer experience to the passengers.
I suppose to some extent a blank piece of paper, new organisation, giving you a chance to maybe make some changes from the ground up that would have been difficult to do purely as Network Rail, as a standalone org.
Yeah, that's right. And of course, Great British Railway has a much broader remit of responsibilities than Network Rail. So that again allows the different teams that are brought together within that organisation to really look with fresh eyes at what can be done. Through a collaborative experience. Using the data and processes that we have.
potentially with some wider sort of end-to-end use cases that might have been outside of the remit of Network Rail alone.
Yeah, most definitely. And particularly in the customer-facing space.
Yeah.
It gives us so many more opportunities, and also gives us opportunity to perhaps standardise some of that experience where at the moment it's very difficult to do so with so many different players in the industry.
Yeah. So we know Great British Railways is coming a little bit further down the line, should we say, without making a pun. But for Network Rail, sort of what's next? 2022 plans and beyond. What are you guys looking at?
Well, we have some ongoing programs of automation. So both in the workflow space that we talked about, really, there's a pipeline of activities to just do more and more of those processes. And I think that both in, as I say, removing paper-based processes and manual processes from the organisation to make us more efficient, and also to leverage the power of workflow to improve the efficiency and data of the activities that we do. In addition to that, we have another program of work focused on RPA, and really the way I see RPA in this space is it's the thing that where we're not really in a position as yet to re-engineer the process. Perhaps we have to simulate a person rather than reconstruct the process so that they're not required. And so RPA is a key part of that in order to give us that interim benefit to really try and make ourselves more efficient in that way.
Potentially back to that technical debt point of view earlier, where you could implement some RPA to achieve a use case for a period of time, knowing that maybe a wider transformation of that process is coming a little bit further down the line.
Yeah, that's right. And of course the technical debt challenge is that people want to spend the next tranche of money on more benefit rather than overcoming some of those challenges. But certainly RPA is a classic way to be able to overcome some of those short-term challenges while recognising that it's perhaps not the end state that you really want in the long term.
And I'd imagine looking for some potential use cases for AI within the organisation as well. When we talk about intelligent automation, most of the definitions out there would state sort of low-code workflow case management, robotic process automation, and then elements of AI to sort of power those two other elements. So what's Network Rail's approach to AI?
Well, we have our data science team who really are specialists in this area, much smarter guys than me. So, they really understand how to apply this. Much of the focus at the moment has been on improving the assets and the maintenance and the operation of the railway. How do we really use that AI-driven and data-driven approach to simplify the very complex scenarios that we're facing every day, so that better decisions can be made. But we also look at other aspects of AI, including natural language processing and chatbots, etc., to understand how can we again help to scale some of the customer-facing services that the railway provides, and really start to give a much more interactive service to our passengers.
Excellent. I mean, that's been really insightful. It's always great to come in and see yourself on the team. I think you really are an exemplary model of sort of dealing with digital transformation projects, using the digital factory approach, and ultimately working with an intelligent automation toolset. And it really is a factor in terms of those requirements coming in, the apps going out. We can obviously see that on our side. Really appreciate you taking the time to speak to us today, and look forward to hearing more about what you and the guys deliver in 2022.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot. Cheers.